Um, Security issues, as we are witnessing now, is a clear indication of failure of government. And we are pretending as people in government and as leaders that God will come from heaven and solve this problem. I don't know what the Quran says, but the Bible says God helps those who help themselves. If every person say that we are praying, when you pray for God guidance and direction. You won't expect that God should come from heaven and solve your problems. And so we have a problem where we need, as leaders, to apply ourselves to it. Instead of doing that, people are busy either politicizing it or turning it into a religious issue and completely negating the fact that we need to address the security situation frontally and face it as a threat to the existence of this country. When it started during Jonathan, the then opposition party felt that they were playing politics with it and that they will use that against the Jonathan government. Jonathan government was defeated partly because Nigerians felt that they were not able to address themselves to the issues of security. We now have a current government, and the security situation have completely degenerated beyond the comprehension of all Nigerians. There is no part of this country that doesn't have a serious security threat. None. When the governor of Benue was shouting about the issue of farmer headers insecurity, people told that it was politics. But sooner than later, that spread to all nook and crannies of the country. And we now have a situation where people are needlessly being killed. I am a victim. My brother, who has been helping the community and trying to bring peace and development to the community, was shot down, was gunned down by unknown gunmen. Actually, as I'm talking to you, there's no trace of who those gunmen were. There's no trace of where they came from. And then, to worsen the situation, shortly after that, some cleric of the Catholic Church were also killed in Benue. And then you know that in the last 2 weeks, about, I think, 12 soldiers were rounded up by youth. These soldiers were on a peaceful mission, and so they were not going to war. So those boys took them unaware and then killed them. You go to Niger State. Niger, it has become a daily occurrence where tens of people are killed, some kidnapped. You can recall when the children were rounded up in a school and moved. That happened in Zamfara, happened in Katsina. It's happening across the entire country. And so if we watch this, gradually, this country, God forbid, will become a failed state. Because the countries that you see, countries like Sudan, countries like Somalia, and to some extent countries like Chad, where people will want to refer to them as failed state. This is how it started. Started on the basis of lack of security in those countries. And gradually, you begin to have warlords, people who now decide to carve out areas for themselves, areas of control. Once you have that, it means that there's no central government. We need the central government to take this issue more seriously than they are now doing. People are romancing the issue. This is a very, very serious problem that we're facing as a country. And nobody is safe. Because any person who knows he's a person in this country, when you want to travel, you must either be carrying loads of police or soldiers before you can travel. And so it's not supposed to be so. When I started politics, I could go to my community alone, the people would be happy. I can't try that. I can't try that now. And I believe that this applies to most of us who are either in elected position or appointed in government. You can't go to your village without security. It's not possible. And so we are facing an existential problem in this country. It's either we face this security situation seriously, or we cease to exist as a country down the road. Because you now have young men who are no longer afraid of soldiers. You know, before, when they mentioned soldiers, even criminals canvas. Now when you mention soldiers, they're moving forward. How can young men, young boys, attack soldiers and kill about 12 of them and carry their weapons? That is unheard of. And you expect that the soldiers will not react. They will. At times they become excessive. That is the condemnable part of it. If criminals attack, look out for the criminals. But the collateral damage that we experience in Benue is part of my constituency. It's just unbelievable. But under the circumstance, where do you lay the blame? Is it with the criminal elements or with the soldiers? So it puts you in a quagmire as to how you actually will react to a situation like that. Will you support the killing of low security people carrying out their responsibility? Or will you support the fact that the soldiers will go out and engage in excessive repressive attacks on the communities that were innocent? You know, so this is a very, very serious problem. I must be treated as such. In the Senate where I work, since from first day that I was inaugurated as a senator, all that has preoccupied the Senate has been issues of security. We even had a retreat where we arrived at some resolution that was presented on the floor of the Senate by the leader of the Senate. And those resolutions were taken to the president. Up to now, there has been no response. And so insecurity in this country continues. But let me say this. Where you have fair state, it is failure of the rural economy. And what we're now having in our rural areas is that the people in the rural areas where our food comes from, where the bulk of agriculture in this country takes place, are being traumatized. They are not going to farm because you either kidnap or killed. And so gradually, you are having every person in the rural area wanting to migrate to the centers, to urban centers. The implication of that is that gradually the rural economy will collapse. Once the rural economy of a country collapses, you don't need a soothsayer to tell you that that country has become a fair state. You don't need a soothsayer to tell you that. And that is where we're headed to. For instance, in Benue, in part of Benue, people can no longer go to the farm. And Benue, as the food basket of the nation, no longer produces food. Those people were, attending to their social problems, for instance, paying school fees and other small problems, through farming activities in their communities. They are no longer able to do that. The children will not go to school. Those children who are not going to school eventually become criminals and then turn against the society. That is what is happening, and then you have a fair state. And so this insecurity problem you raise is a problem that should ordinarily worry any good thinking Nigerian. It should not be politicized.
When you talk about it being politicized, I would agree with you to a large extent, because it appears whoever talks about insecurity in the country is termed as an opposition, because what happens these days is people from the ruling or people who have sympathy for the ruling party do not talk about these things. Even when you bring up these issues, they give you reasons as to why these things are happening, and it is not the fault of the government. Just studying particularly where you work for now, you people have been labeled, particularly this 9th Senate, as rubber stamp. Yes, Nigerians see you people as just rubber stamp. Anything that comes from the executive will pass. What is the true situation of the 9th Senate?
Well, I wouldn't agree with that general characterization of the 9th Senate as rubber stamped. We are Nigerians elected on different platforms, in different offices, But the expectation of the Constitution is that we should work towards a common purpose. That is to enhance the well-being of the country and the ordinary Nigerians. And so what we are trying to do, even in the opposition party, is that it's okay. Let us not be unduly aggressive. Let us cooperate and see if the ruling party or the ruling government will be able to provide the dividends of democracy. That is what we've done. What we've seen is that they are totally incapable of doing that. They no longer have an excuse to say that, well, opposition are not allowing us to work. We've decided that it's okay, let us allow you people to work. And what Nigerians are receiving is insecurity, lack of good management of the economy, and the social vices that are attendant to such issues. That is what we have. And so no person will blame the opposition. If we're vehement and fighting in the National Assembly that, look, this will not agree, this will not agree, the excuse would have been that the oppositions are not the one allowing us to work. What is the excuse now? Incompetence. That is clearly an issue of incompetence on the part of the ruling party. That is what is on ground.
Do you see your party returning in 2023 now that Nigerians have
well, if Nigerians, well, if it has to start with the electoral system. Okay. If the electoral act, amended electoral act, is signed into law, then Nigerians will be sure that you will get who you vote for. If the electoral act is not signed, then we're in for a big mess. And so whether there will be credible election that will bring in results that will be acceptable to Nigerians and Nigerians will have confidence in depends on the electoral act being signed. And so the issue of PDP coming back into power should not be a problem, but it will be a problem if the electoral act is not signed. Because the electoral act at least will be the genesis of a credible process. But if it is not signed, it will go back to what has happened in the past, where people just go and stuff ballots and then say you should go to court. When you go to court, you don't get justice. And so PDP ordinary should come back to power because Nigerians now feel that PDP perform far better than what is happening now.
The Swedish, as an executive, former executive of the Benin State, and so going back to the issue of insecurity in the country.
Yeah.
In your level of interaction, of course you are a highly placed Nigerian citizen, in your level of interaction, do you foresee in a very close time that we are likely to get over this crisis?
No, there's no seriousness on the part of the central government. Let me tell you something. Government, legitimate government, are the only people who have legitimate power of violence. That is why you have the police, you have the armed forces, and then you have other paramilitary carrying guns. That the Constitution confer on a legitimate government legitimate right of violence. And so when you have a serious central government, you won't have the kind of situation that we're having. And so I don't see us getting out of this with the unseriousness that's being exhibited by the ruling party. I don't see it. It will not happen. Except we experience a miracle. Otherwise, this is going to continue to generate. And when we start partisan party politics towards election, it's going to get worse. Because people are going to take advantage. People who have access to these bandits will take advantage in order for them to win election. So it's going to get worse. So we have this year, till the end of this year, for something serious to be done. And I don't see that because there's no serious action coming from the central government. The governors are in name said to be chief security officers of that state, but in actual sense they don't have the power of coercion. The police are not under them, the military are not under them. So what do you use in controlling situations when there arises in your area? You need to have this. That is not to say that I support state police. I do not. the kind of immaturity in our system, state police will further divide the country. But I would want that state governors or state government have some level of control on the apparatus of coercion. That is either the police, especially the police and these other paramilitary agencies. So that when security situation arises in that state, they should be able to say, look, go and do this, go and do this, go and do this. As it is now, if we have a serious security situation and you want the Commissioner of Police to take action, they will have to get back to the IG. If it is very serious, the IG will have to get to the President. And you know that chain of procedure. By the time there is deployment, you are just beating the part after the snake has passed. The actions, criminals have done what they have done, or you go there. You just have to deal with the outcome or the consequence of the action. So we have a very serious problem that needs to be addressed by the central government, addressed very seriously.
Assuming you are to address depressed people in a situation like this.
Address
depressed set of people where they are constantly being attacked.
Yes.
And you are to provide either solution and how this can be mitigated. Well, basically can be your template, sir. And
well, under the circumstances where it has become obvious that the central government is unable to protect the people have to seek for self-help. It's as simple as that. And that is the danger in this. Part of my community is constantly being traumatized by some militia or some bandit. The trauma in that place is very high. And eventually, they've deployed soldiers there for up to a year plus now. It has not abated. And so what the people will eventually resort to is self-help. And that is how gradually it starts that, everything runs out of control. These people in Sankara axis of my constituency, the trauma is beyond your imagination. Women who are on the farm are being killed and raped. They will just go, just yesterday they told me they went to a village, burned down the entire village, killed about 12 people, just yesterday. People who are doing their legitimate farming business, nothing, they're not involved in politics, they're not involved in anything. So what do you expect such people to do? And there are military deployed there and police. This is not being abetted. And so those people eventually will seek for self-help. And self-help complicates issue in any country. But that is where we are headed to. Until and except the central government take desperate action. Because when you have a desperate situation, you need to be desperate in addressing it. We must show some level of desperation. Other than this lazy attitude towards the security situation, every person is concerned and it's happening everywhere. State governments at the regional level are forming all kinds of security apparatus. Eventually, those apparatus will assume a dimension that will be out of control. That is a larger implication for the country. You have the Ametokun in the southwest. You have a Bube something. A Bube Agu in the southeast now. So eventually, you are going to have the North Central to come up with something. So what is the essence of a central government? It means that we don't have a central government. It's gross incompetence on the part of central government. And we cannot shy away from it. Let people not shy away from it. That is a fact. Where it has never happened in this country, where regional states at the regional level will come together and form their own security apparatus. And the central government is watching it. Because they have come to the sad conclusion that the central government is incapable of protecting the citizens of that state. That is danger. It's very ominous for the future of this country. And so we can't shy away from it as leaders. We must address this issue with all seriousness that it deserves. It's a bipartisan issue. It's not a partisan issue. Any person, because in Niger where they are killing, Niger is an APC state. So it is not limited to PDP. It's not limited to APGA or any other party. It's a Nigerian problem that must be addressed by people who were elected and swore to the oath by the Constitution that they will protect lives and properties of Nigeria. And they have shown grossly that they are incapable of doing that.
Before we go to power, sorry, I just remembered something. In 2015, before 2015, there was a prediction that Nigeria would disintegrate. And people thought maybe the election would bring that to happen. That didn't happen. We're still a nation. But a lot of people are concerned that with all these things happening, insecurity, economy, and all of that, we're gradually moving towards that direction.
Well, God forbid that we disintegrate, because it's not in the interest of anybody. But that is the wish of all Nigerians, that we shouldn't disintegrate. But we must take deliberate and conscious efforts towards preventing that from happening. As it is now, we are not. And so if we don't take time, that prediction, unfortunately, will come to pass. May it not come to pass. May it not come to pass. Because if it comes to pass, you know, this country has a huge population. It's going to be disastrous, not just for the country, but for the continent, and eventually for the world. So, as leaders of this country, we must put partisan politics apart, sit down together and address the security situation of the country. And until we do that, this, you talk today, somebody will come and say, these people, it started with PDP. That is totally immaterial. PDP had security situation. It didn't generate to where everywhere in your part of the country, people were forming a Motokun or a Pube. They were not. So this is a new challenge that the new government must face up to it. So it's not every time buck passing, but it won't solve the problem. It won't solve the problem. When you are elected, your intention is to work better than the previous government. It is not for you to sit down and everything you say started in PDP, started in PDP. PDP have gone 6 years ago. And 6 years, the situation has degenerated. Is this still PDP? It's not. And so Nigeria should note that we should, as we move forward, look for competent leaders, people who have track record of solving problems, to elect them so that we can address this problem. Otherwise, gradually, the country is disintegrating piecemeal. Where we are now, we are at the precipice. We are like cliffhangers. You know, any snap anywhere, we are scattered. And so we, as leaders, must sit together, must, if it means convocating a conference where we sit down as leaders and speak outside of party politics, speak as Nigerians to address the Nigerian problem that affects all and sundry, not just talking politics. So I believe that with God, we'll be able to do that. But let us not wait for God to come down, and God can guide us and direct us if we are sincere. Sincerity also has to come in. If we're not sincere, then we're wasting every person's time. People are joking. If you go to countries where these things have happened, you look at human beings, you think they're not normal human beings. I've been to a few countries where I've witnessed this. And so people have not witnessed it here, and so they just talk recklessly and carelessly about it when it is mentioned and reduce it to a political issue. It's far beyond that.